We're still talking about the latest coup in Africa. Of course, Ali Bongo, the president of Gabon, remains in house arrest since last week when he was, dethroned, so to speak, with the army, coming in to take over and more or less nullify his announcement as the winner of the presidential election in Gabon. Of course, so much has happened, Mr. Nwoko and Kunnu, so much has happened, since then, as you must have been following, one of which is the fact that the African Union has responded, saying a suspension remains in place in Gabon. But what do you make of, because I can take from what you've said so far, pro-Africa, as we really must think as Africa, and, leverage on the Africa project or revive the Africa project. But with this response by the African Union, not exactly surprising, but, what are you hoping, that leaders from within Africa can use this period, even though it's a suspension, but in terms of the positives, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at the polarization that is in existence in the AU as well, because if you listen to Bono very well, he mentioned Mubarak, how he was allowed to carry on with that style of this desperate leadership that he provided for the people. Right. Now, the West had a reason for supporting him, and even for supporting the current moment in the Sisi, yeah. Now, don't forget about the Sahel and the crisis and the terrorist crisis they've had in the West and all that. Now, if you don't understand the role that Egypt played, you won't understand why they have the support of the West in tolerating the kind of vindictive leadership that you have in that place. Journalists are in jail in Egypt as I speak to you.
Yes, right. With
no charges, with no allegations, with no nothing. They've not been taken to court. And there's an outcry by a section of the media asking that these guys be released. Sometime last year, one journalist was eventually released, but there are people in jail. Nobody is saying anything about it. Nobody knows what their crime is, apart from the fact that they got into the country to cover news in that country as correspondent or whatever it is. But journalists are in detention. Nobody is saying any of that. What is going on in Togo, like he also said, African Union hasn't spoken up. What happened in Sudan for many years, many years, nobody spoke up. Nobody spoke up. The only reason the Americans intervened was because Osama bin Laden was a resident in that country. And from there, he was asked to leave. And the president then was declared a wanted man. And all the crisis. I think that Africans, we must speak in one voice at every occasion. They need to speak to the people in Togo right now as we speak. When what happened in Sudan happened, I was invited here. And I said that it's a crisis that will not be resolved because it had to do with two individuals. And the issue on the ground is a question of, is the issue of ego. Pure and simple, it was the issue of ego. Why hasn't African Union intervened? Why is it the Arabs that are intervening? Why has it become a religious whatever that they have to go to Saudi Arabia for talks that has not yielded the desired result? I think that is jaundiced. I think it's misplaced to always suspend countries because people in uniform who are citizens of those countries have said that the way we are being treated, the way we are being governed, that we deserve more. I think that is wrong. Number two, I mentioned in this studio the need for, I don't think they have it in ECOWAS, but I know in African Union that they have it. You have peer review mechanism that allows you to go to those countries by appointing few heads of states or diplomatic officials or people in a certain committee to say, go to this place and tell them they need to stop what they are doing. I think that that's the way that we'll go. Then we need to get our leaders to begin to develop their minds. It's not sufficient to just develop your mind. Develop your mind, then implement what is right. Like I said, we have very educated, brilliant minds in Africa. Bring them together. We have them in African Bank. We have them in different agencies and different organizations. Bring them to look at this democracy and ask, what can we do? I have used the word, I don't know whether it's a good word to use or not, the word modification. Modification. Because as an individual, I have noticed the exclusion of people. This is one of the things that former president of this country, President Babangida, tried to do when he embarked on this unending, protracted democratic process that ended in chaos. By trying to weed out all this money back from our democracy, wanted all-inclusive participation by everybody. I think that's what he wanted to do. He probably missed it somewhere along the line, because you have these politicians, some of our politicians don't get it. They don't understand. And we don't want any West African Spring or African Spring here. We want our people to think by asking why. Is it difficult to ask why? How? What are we doing? Don't you question yourself in the things that you do? Don't you tell yourself what time to leave home so that you can be at work at the right time? We need to get it right now. And now it seems to me that that we owe our leaders today is to be patient, to see that these things that they are doing will work out, and we are praying. And I have also suggested that your people from Harvard, from Cambridge, from the best places. Since I was young, I heard Babangida, I saw Babangida implement a structural adjustment program, and for the first time I heard the name Idika Kalu. When they were mentioning him, I was a very young guy. I thought the man was coming with a magic wand to fix our economy. I'm always mentioning the man's name because as a young man, the name entered into my mind. And since after him, we have brought many professionals and experts. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, for instance, is the last person that there was one Akumi that was around in 2015 or thereabout. So what I'm saying that these guys haven't found a solution to our economic downturn. So we need to ask the layman, how can we fix our economy? My suggestion is that the first thing that we must do is show compassion. That's what they didn't do in Gabon. What is compassion? When you have sympathy for the downtrodden, that's the meaning of compassion.
So my takeaway,
you must build houses, basic housing for the people,
so
not luxurious homes.
Social welfare is key.
I don't know about social welfare, but I know about compassion. Compassion allows your heart to go out to people like me who can provide for themselves, who can provide for my children. Not anymore. I was able to do that in the past. Now I'm not able to do it. I can't put food on the table this morning. You must show us sympathy. Your heart must come towards people like us and others and provide for us.
And another thing I'm
not talking about palliative, so because
another thing that you've also talked about is, the issue, because I'm just trying to get out, the specifics from you and, run them by Mr. Kunnu. Another thing you've talked about is peer review mechanisms, from within the AU.
You can send delegation and say, we are not accepting this.
Let us monitor.
Let them send one now to Togo. Let them send one now to Togo and send another one to Uganda.
Yes.
Okay.
Send another one to
Senegal.
Zimbabwe. What did you say?
Senegal as well.
So while we're talking,
Senegal is the tipping point. I talked about tipping point. Is tipping. Senegal is there's danger.
Okay,
in Senegal.
And in the midst of all this, because the question had been asked, who is next? We've even seen some responses from some African countries. Paul Kagame.
How about Cameroon? We have not mentioned the old man in Cameroon who has held these people down for God knows how many. That's sick fellow.
Right. In the case of Paul Kagame and a few other African leaders, we've seen some form of responses to the matter with reports of them retiring generals
over 1,000
and several other officers, junior officers or less ranking officers. Yes. When you look at all of this, is Africa truly ready for this kind of revolution that
the point is
talking about?
Retiring those generals will only accentuate what was intended or the reason for doing that. Do not forget that the military has a system that it functions through. Once you are somebody's superior in terms of when you got into the army or you got into, you have to, even when the person is retired, the person remains your superior. That's a fact of the matter. So whatever it is that Kagame has done and whatever it is that the Paul Biya group has done, most definitely will bring again a reinforcement into the consciousness of these generals that indeed we need to take these people down. Because there would not have been need to do that if indeed you seven the people. So for you to suddenly become jittery is indicative of the fact that you're aware that such perpetuation of self is wrong, but you continue to do it in disregard to whatever it is that the people want to do. And for all these years that Paul Biya has been living between Switzerland, France, and Cameroon, they carry him to the elections. When they declare him winner, they carry him back to Switzerland. France has continued to deal with that particular country because, as far as it's concerned, the things that it has from that country has not been punctured. Now, Woko was talking about solutions. Let's understand this. The reasons none of these Bretton Woods institutions trained persons have succeeded is because there's a peculiarity of econometrics. Now, Africa never used to spend money it doesn't have in the form of credit card until after the Second World War. Now, when such economic system was introduced to us, we felt, oh, this is money we never had, let's take it. But the point is, it's an economic system meant to keep Africa under. Bring an expert here and let's have a conversation for 30 minutes. I could take the person to the cleaners. Because checking the historicity of how we came to operate a credit system is the reason many of Africa's countries remains in perpetual debt to the Bretton Woods institution. So what are we going to do in the first place? How do we really get out of debt? Is it 50 trillion? We can negotiate now the debts. Okay, which ones can you forgive us? Which one will you get off our necks using mineral resources? Which ones do you want us to pay? And we decide in the course of paying those monies that our resources first must begin to provide an entire value chain for the country. For instance, how can a Niger Republic that has uranium still doesn't have enough electricity because they are not exploring the entire value chain? Listen here. The entire Eiffel Tower is powered by the uranium in Niger Republic. And the Eiffel Tower again was built by the monies collected from those who fought against France over 100 years ago, preventing slavery in Haiti. So they collected money all from that time up until the 20th, because they said they paid those money to the descendants of those slave owners that Haiti prevented from holding them captive. So you need to understand some of these very serious issues so that when you speak to issues, you speak. So now what Africa needs to do, if it is ready, is to evolve a system where we will not spend the money we do not have. We will first of all ensure that any mineral resources we have is first of all utilized by our country, ensuring that our citizens have enough of electricity and they're able to pay for it, have enough gas, pay for it, have enough crude, pay for it, because those things first enable. If you check the US, for instance, the US trades more amongst itself, the respective states. Before you don't find anything within the country, it's going to take a lot of time because they've explored value chain. So that is one thing we can do. Then secondly, let's come to the table. Nigeria has in excess of about 358 or 400 languages. Excuse me, Croatia is just about 4 million in population. Gabon, that Nwoko said, 2.3 million. We have about how many countries within West Africa that are less than the entire population of Lagos, but they are existing. What do we do then? Is to say it is obvious that there are divisions by virtue of language, by virtue of orientation and civility. What do we do? Excuse me, every civilization has evolved from crudity to civility by becoming conscious of what it can adopt and adapt in other functional systems, which is possible. Now, let's look at this. The constitution of this country is the first fraud. Section 10 tells everybody that there shall not be a state religion. The entire not declare Sharia in a secular system. That's the first fraud. And I'm happy that President Bola Tinubu has perhaps a cosmopolitan view of things. That is the first thing that should be expunged. Because in contravention of that portion of the constitution, some regions of this country believe that they can still go ahead. And President Olusegun Obasanjo looked away. Look at the Child Rights Act, for instance, that the constitution said you are an adult at 18. People give children in marriages at 14 and 15. That is confusion. You need to address that again because those things are contravention of the rule book that guides the country. So when you're talking about the constitution of this country, we have to be sincere first that that is a major problem. And if we're able to expunge all of those areas or unbundle it entirely, we're serious. Now, this country has a lot of people along the ethnic lines that feel, it was talking about all-inclusive government. Why is it that when we are talking about states in this country, the southeastern part has 5 states? and Northwest as a region has 7. Excuse me, don't tell me there's no land. Give them 7. They'll do whatever they want to do with it. Excuse me, equity is key to a functional system. And that is why many countries in Africa are affected because of the imbalance of the levels of power. So first, we have to evolve our own economic systems. We don't have to spend the money we don't have because we have the resources and we have the youngest population in comparison to other continents of the world. That's one. Then secondly, what are the agencies of imbalances? If you're talking about getting into the military, for instance, you are telling me that because I have 44 local governments. No. What's my competence level? Put me in a class, let's solve mathematics together. If I dust you, I have an A, you have a B. You are my subordinate. That is excellence. You don't tell me because I have 44 local governments, then the number of persons that join the army from your region will be more than mine. All these imbalances are part of the reasons why, for instance, the agitations in the southeast has become incremental. The Oduduwa Republic has become very loud. And the northern part of the country has been the most silent regarding breaking away. These things can be addressed if you first of all say, we will not allow this imbalance. I'm happy that the wife of this president is Christian. So he has nowhere to go. What he doesn't sign, he will sign in the bedroom. So that this country can be balanced.
Right. And you're stressing on the case in Nigeria.
Most definitely.
According to you now, is going to reflect. If we
it
follow this through,
it will work.
It will
Let
work.
us stop spending what we do. For instance, if you look at, for instance, the Congo Democratic Republic. Excuse me, the flora and fauna in that country, the species of birds, the mineral resources in that country cannot be exhausted in 400 years. You can quote me and go do your research. But you know one of the things Africa do? Africa forgets. The neocolonialists of this country killed Lumumba of that country. They have his teeth, as I speak, in Belgium Museum. Excuse me, in fact, what should have been done is to cut away Belgium and say, return every part of Lumumba's body. You go again, they killed Sankara. The moment Sankara said, this is the land of the honest people, France destroyed everything they had in Burkina Faso and ensured that until recently, their own person that killed Sankara remained in power. Excuse me, is Africa suffering from dementia? Or what is wrong? They killed Nkrumah. The West, excuse me, I'm simply giving, these are examples. These are examples of what we
that people can relate to.
Yes, please.
But Chukwuemeka has spoken about a peer review mechanism.
Yes,
because
please.
who checks who now?
That's beautiful.
Are we just going to appeal to you as a president, or you as, am I going to just appeal to your conscience, or what? Who checks who?
In the first place, let's say that Nigeria has a bragging right in terms of checking others. Our elections have been flawed, I agree. But in the past 23 years, we have had unchecked democracy. One government has left office and another has come in. That means we have bragging rights. But if you check, Senegal would have had the bragging rights until the character, the Homo habilis called Macky Sall, that came to power and he was applauded, only want to destroy it. So we might have included, for instance, Senegal, but now we can't include Senegal. Our population and the strength of our economy is good. Let's look at South Africa. Of course, Cyril Ramaphosa has been facing a lot of challenges. Most definitely we can consider Cyril Ramaphosa. Tunisia is a born good country as we speak. Egypt doesn't qualify because of best leading. Algeria is a country that we could look at, but still, the northern part of Africa believes it doesn't essentially belong to Black Africa, that it belongs to the Arab League. Excuse me, many of the countries within the North African region are more Arab. In fact, at some point, Morocco wanted to become a member of the European Union. So that tells you that many of, and there's a monarchical system, of course, in Morocco, where the king, for instance, is seen more. I think it's after the template of the British system. I'm simply saying here that Nigeria at the moment has a bragging right to align with other countries that have what looks like democracy and summon people. Peer review mechanism is very good. Go to a place like Uganda, go to Togo. In fact, we should first of all go to Togo. We should send the best of hands and brains to Togo. Eyadema, you are leaving. If he argues, we should withdraw our support because Togo still depends on us for support. Withdraw all the things you've been given to Togo. The so-called 21,000 troops intended to go into Niger Republic should be used first to go into a country where there are despotic leaders. You have been forming a coup against your people by perpetuating yourself in power. These 21,000 troops by ECOWAS will unseat you and oversee transition so that you can have democracy. Excuse me, democracy in itself. may not be the real evil. It is not adopting it the best way possible to function. So what do? You domicile it in such a way that the configurations are a reflection of your system. Let's talk and say nobody stays in power forever anymore in Africa.
Okay, let me run that suggestion now with Chuks Nwoko here.
Please.
So there is a standby West African military force now, you know, that could go in to the Nigerian nation now to, get out, to extricate the president. But he is saying now that perhaps the major priority now is to release these troops to a country like Togo.
Yes.
Right.
Most definitely.
Let me get him to
Okay.
Yes. He didn't remember to mention the leadership example of Mandela. Nobody wants to copy that.
Right.
So, yeah, as you were, maybe by fortune, we already have that body. Why can't you? Do you know that our former president, President Olusegun Obasanjo, because of his embattled personality and rambunctious whatever, even at his age, could enter anywhere and speak without fear and say, this is what is right, this is what is wrong, like what he did in Togo. Now, you don't have that anymore. This our president, new president, has that personality. He has the ability to negotiate. He's smart enough to know what is right constitutionally and all that. He can also visit the place. And in fact, I saw a clip somewhere indicating that he was somewhere sometime not long ago. He can go back there and provide that regional leadership that we need. Because we need that leadership now more than ever before. It's not enough to criticize militaries, make it look like the aliens from outer space. It is important that this body, instead of wanting to go to a place to go and engage military of that country, they can go to a place where they have seemingly what is like a democratic rule and ask them to vacate the place, or we force you out and conduct an election for you. If they don't have the resources to conduct the election, we can mobilize funds and do it for you. Yes. But if you can't say you're preaching democracy, you're against military rule, and you are allowing, hypocritically allowing that kind of thing to happen in other places, it's no longer allowed. It will not be allowed. We have what it takes to provide that level of leadership in this country. What I don't want is the kind of leadership that is aimed or designed to distract our own president. It's not going to work because it's going to result, you have all these people who like to criticize government and all that. I'm not a part of it. What I'm saying is that I have a contribution to make. And that contribution is that we have enough crises here. We have enough setbacks here. We are almost like a continent here. We have many tribes here, people, and then you have trouble entrepreneurs waiting in the wings to capitalize on any error by our president. So let him send people there, or send this ECOWAS team to that place and ask them to conduct an election before the end of the year. Because it's become a very bad example for you to say you are running the democracy. Meanwhile, what you have is a monarchical leadership. It's no longer allowed. It's not good. Mandela left enough example for all these people to emulate. That man in Cameroon should be removed instead of quarreling with the military in Gabon and in Niger. That's where they should go to. Mobilize the African force or West ECOWAS force and go to the place and ask the man to leave that place and conduct an election and probably expel all these people who are also troubling us here. How is it that we have oil? Have you read the history of oil in the world? Have you read the history? Saudi Arabia, Nigeria started making money from oil in 1973. When oil rose from $2 to 11, from 11 to 22, and Nigeria began to make money. Nigeria, it was not an isolated case. It happened in Saudi Arabia. Go and see how they have managed these oil sisters who are destroying and not accounting to us and bribing and perverting justice in our country. We have to come to an end. Everything that has a beginning must come to an end. We must take ownership of our region, of our continent, and stop mentioning West and what America says. The West, our international community. International community, what have they done for us? Our steel company is dead. Our oil, we are not making maximum benefit from it. There is nothing that we have gained from them. So let us focus on our economy and practice little things. I talked about international financial organizations. Look, let me tell you what to do after this program.
Right.
Go to their website and check the owners of International Monetary Fund and World Bank. They have shareholders. Go and check it. Right. How will they do you well? How are they going to think good of you? How are they going to help you develop? Go and check the owners. Let me not say it on television. Open their website and check the board, the owners, the shareholders of this international organization. You will be shocked. How can these individuals, institutions, owners of World Bank and International Money Fund, give you solution to your problem? Since structural adjustment program of the 1980s, 1986, till now, what have we achieved?
All right. I want you to make, final thoughts. We have less than a minute now to wrap things up on the show this morning.
Well, I'm happy that these things have happened, but another thing that is very instructive that Nwoko said is that when all these leaders will want to send troops into their countries don't hold election, what about our local government elections that people refuse to hold in this country? Anybody who comes to equity must use bleach first so that your hands will be clean. I'm saying that the president of this country must make it compulsory and very hard for any sitting governor. Now, Obasaki just wants to conduct election because he's leaving office less than a year. I think they did that days ago. I'm simply telling you here that such a thing should never be allowed to happen in this country. While we are making effort at the level of the presidency and the gubernatorial election, at the local government level, it must be made completely impossible for anybody to want to be the person to keep, those that are managing local councils, the most important segment of government. And at the same time, we must make it compulsory for this money. Let me say this, for instance, now. Only 2 states, and I mean only 2 states, were able to ensure that monies meant for local government go straight to them. When Wike was there for 8 years, he never did that. And of course, when Jigawa State governor was there, I'm saying that even this beautiful Lagos that we are, I've actually not followed that. I'm simply saying that there are lots of things we must do to ensure that everything works for this country so that leadership can actually be accountable and be seen to deliver the dividends of democracy.
Gentlemen, that would be a fine place to rest our conversations this morning. And I want to say a big thank you to you both, Chuks Nwoko and Adeniyi Kunnu, for your insights and contributions on this and how it affects not just this countries involved, but indeed the continent and the world.